to be a restorer, you have to have this mentality that governs the way you see the world. And the way you see the world is you see a world as it ought to be. Not as it is, not what's broken. You know, it's people being able to imagine something that's not there and then work towards it. And I think this is the vision of the kingdom. You know, this is what Jesus does. He comes and describes to us the way the world ought to work. And then we're supposed to live into that. And we realize we're going to not always get it right, that we're not the saviors of the world. We're not going to fix everything that's broken. But that part of us living out a faithful life is to work towards that. Let God's power transform it however He can. And sometimes we have setbacks, but we just keep working towards it, because what we know is that God can give people a vision for the kingdom when we have tangible things that show up representing the kingdom.
I think the vision of Jesus, the vision of the kingdom of God, is about restoring God's good world and taking whatever is broken in your context and trying to look at it through the lens of the kingdom of God, which is a vision to restoration.
Christianity for so long was very isolated and removed and exclusionary, and it's the opposite of that. It's coming alongside others and looking towards the hope and the rebuilding and the restoration that's possible here and now.
The real message of the gospel is that God comes to dwell within us, that He's reconciling all things and that we're His ambassadors, and that we actually become part of God's restoration process here on earth.
We have lost our ability to communicate with a secular culture, so that the good news is no longer good news. So this sort of language, I think, beautifully articulates what Jesus came to do in a hostile culture like we live in.
In the same way, I think the Next Christians is giving language and rise to all of us who don't want to just deconstruct and talk about what's wrong, but are looking for, how do we live in this world? How now shall we live? And what does the gospel say about the way we live and interact in the world? And so giving language to how we're seeing Christians who are really in many ways pioneering the way forward in this new context, I have found brings the lights on for people. The people who are leading our churches, they're the first priority. How do we help leaders in our churches start to see what's changing and to understand what's unchanging, and how those two come together in our moment? I think that's our challenge that we are trying to push forward. And so we're very committed. Our team, our work, our efforts are all geared towards helping renew and kind of re-educate Christians to these realities and give them the tools and the resources to move this conversation forward. I see it as a conversation much more than anything else, a conversation people are already having and wanting to have. The church should be the place where this conversation can be very normalized, can be accepted, not repelled, but accepted, and it will grow a love that people have for the church. This is what Christ has called us to live in community. It's not easy. We're going to have little disagreements, but in general, this is the way of life that the world looks at to go, I want to be a part of that, because I see a community of people trying to express and embody something different than maybe what they had thought the Christians were about. And that gives me great hope and great excitement to get to work on that kind of a project.